Luca stared at the blinking cursor on his computer screen. His hands hovered above the keyboard, but the words wouldn't come. The list of things he should be doing loomed in the back of his mind. Emails to send, projects to finish, calls to make. Yet, he felt paralyzed. It wasn't that he didn't want success. He did. He dreamt about it every day. But the weight of his ambition felt like it was suffocating him. He had ideas. Big ones. Revolutionary ones. He could see the vision in his mind, what he could achieve, who he could become. But when it came time to take action, the drive seemed to evaporate. The motivation was there, hidden somewhere beneath the surface, but every attempt to harness it felt like trying to grab smoke. It wasn't laziness. He wasn't lazy. He just couldn't seem to move. The idea of working, of pushing through, was met with overwhelming resistance. And no matter how hard he tried to push through that barrier, something inside him said, "Not today." Luca wasn't the kind of person who'd give up. He was ambitious after all. He knew what success looked like, and he was sure that with the right push, he could get there. But every time he tried to take that first step, a voice inside him would whisper, "Maybe you're not cut out for it. Maybe you'll fail." That inner conflict was a constant tug of war. His ambition screamed at him to act, to make things happen, but the heaviness in his chest, the uncertainty, made it feel impossible. Was it really laziness that kept him from moving forward? Or was it something deeper? A fear of failure, of rejection, of the unknown? Luca's mind raced with possibilities. He could be someone, he could do great things, but every time he started to take action, something inside him pulled back. The gap between his ambitions and his actions was wide, and he couldn't seem to cross it. Is this what it's like to be ambitious but stuck? To dream big but feel incapable of making it happen? Section 1. The weight of ambition without action. When we think about people who are lazy but ambitious, we often assume they lack desire. But this isn't the case. The real issue lies in the disconnect between their deep ambitions and the inability to take consistent action. For Luca, the pull of his dreams was strong, but the fear of failure, judgment, and imperfection created a paralyzing effect that kept him from moving forward. It's like a balloon tied to the ground. The air inside it is the ambition, the desire to soar, to reach great heights, but no matter how much energy is inside, the string keeps it tethered to the earth. The balloon will never take flight unless someone has the courage to cut the string. But for many people, including Luca, cutting that string feels like an overwhelming risk. Psychologically, this struggle can often be attributed to something called cognitive dissonance, the uncomfortable tension we feel when our actions don't align with our beliefs. In Luca's case, he believed he was destined for greatness, yet his actions didn't match that belief. His body resisted what his mind wanted, and that dissonance created a sense of guilt, frustration, and confusion. Studies show that our brains are wired to resist effort. It's not that we're lazy, it's that the brain is wired for efficiency. When faced with something that feels too overwhelming, like a massive goal, the brain activates resistance. This resistance is often so powerful that even the most ambitious people find themselves paralyzed by the very task they should be undertaking. Do you ever find yourself overwhelmed by the thought of achieving your dreams? Paralyzed by the effort it might take to get there? Section 2. The illusion of effortlessness. In Luca's mind, success was supposed to feel effortless. He saw it in his role models, the successful people who seemed to glide through life, effortlessly climbing the ladder of success. It was always presented that way. Easy, glamorous, smooth. And so, Luca had internalized the belief that he should be able to do the same. But the truth was more complicated. Success never comes without effort, no matter how effortlessly others make it seem. This gap between expectation and reality is often what holds people like Luca back. When he compared himself to others, he felt as though he should already be where they were, effortlessly. And because his journey wasn't easy or smooth, he began to question whether he was capable at all. This is the trap of perfectionism. Perfectionism creates a false narrative that success should look clean, easy, and quick. But the reality is, success is messy. It's filled with mistakes, setbacks, and a whole lot of hard work. People like Luca, who are both lazy and ambitious, fall into the trap of expecting that success will feel easy from the beginning. And when it doesn't, they pull back and wait for that perfect moment when things will finally feel effortless. Section 3. The fear of starting. Luca's biggest obstacle wasn't his ability to succeed, it was his inability to start. And for many ambitious people who struggle with laziness, this is often the case. The idea of starting something new, especially something important, can feel terrifying. What if it doesn't work out? What if he's not good enough? The fear of failure becomes so overwhelming that it's easier to avoid starting altogether. This fear is rooted in the anticipatory anxiety that many people experience when faced with a new task. It's the fear of the unknown, of stepping into something where the outcome is uncertain. And for someone like Luca, who already feels the weight of his ambitions, that fear can feel suffocating. In fact, studies have shown that when we anticipate failure, our brains register that anticipation as a physical threat. The emotional weight of failure is so real that it can stop us in our tracks. The problem isn't that Luca is lazy, it's that his mind is wired to avoid perceived threats, and failure feels like one of those threats. The more he thought about his goals, the more overwhelmed he felt. The bigger the dream, the bigger the fear, and instead of taking action, he retreated into procrastination, telling himself that he would tackle it tomorrow when he felt more ready. But that day never came. Section 4, the trap of perfectionism. Luca's procrastination wasn't simply about avoiding work, it was about the pressure he put on himself to do everything perfectly. He believed that if he couldn't do something flawlessly, then it wasn't worth doing at all. The irony, of course, was that this fear of imperfection only guaranteed that nothing ever got done. It was a pattern he couldn't escape. Whether it was writing an article, sending an email, or making a business decision, Luca's mind would flood with doubts. What if it's not good enough? What if people criticize me? What if I fail? So, rather than face those fears, he froze. He would stare at the task for hours, overthinking every minute detail, ensuring that each part was as close to perfect as possible before he even took the first step. The result? Nothing got finished. This cycle of perfectionism is common for many ambitious individuals who struggle to take action. In fact, research has shown that perfectionism is directly linked to procrastination. The desire to make everything just right can become so paralyzing that the task at hand becomes insurmountable. Instead of embracing progress, we wait for the perfect moment, a moment that never comes. Luca's mind was consumed with an unrealistic vision of success, one where he achieved his goals with little effort and no mistakes, but in reality, success rarely comes in a perfect package. It's messy, it's flawed, and it's built through trial and error. The road to achievement is paved with mistakes, each one a stepping stone toward progress. Yet, the fear of imperfection held Luca captive, making every task feel like an insurmountable challenge. It wasn't that he lacked ambition. It was that his desire for perfection paralyzed him from even trying. How many times have you stopped yourself from starting something because you feared it wouldn't be perfect? Section 5, the power of external pressure. For Luca, the pressure to succeed wasn't just self-imposed. It came from the outside world as well. His family, friends, and society at large all had expectations for him. He was supposed to have it all figured out by now. Everyone around him seemed to be moving ahead, ticking off their milestones, living their best lives. The pressure weighed heavily on him. Every conversation with his parents was a reminder that he should be further along in his career. His friends talked about their new jobs, promotions, and businesses. Social media, of course, was filled with success stories that made him feel even more inadequate. Everyone seemed to be racing ahead while Luca remained stuck in the starting block, unable to take the first step. This external pressure wasn't just motivational. It was suffocating. The constant comparisons drained his energy. He started questioning whether he was even worthy of success. If others were achieving their dreams, why couldn't he? Was he not trying hard enough? Or worse, was he just not capable? What Luca didn't realize was that this constant comparison wasn't helping him. In fact, research has shown that external pressure, especially when it's tied to comparison, can actually reduce motivation and increase stress. When we feel as though we're constantly being judged or compared to others, it can lead to feelings of inadequacy which only add to the reluctance to act. The pressure to live up to others' expectations, while also carrying the weight of his own ambitions, kept Luca locked in place. Each attempt to move forward was met with self-doubt, the belief that he wasn't measuring up to the success of those around him. The result, a vicious cycle of self-criticism and inaction. Have you ever felt the pressure of others' expectations holding you back, even when you know you want to succeed? Section 6. Understanding the paradox of laziness and ambition. Now, we return to the core paradox. Why is it that some people, like Luca, who are full of ambition, end up stuck in a loop of inaction? The key lies in understanding the difference between ambition and action. Ambition is the dream, the vision of what we could be, but it's not the same as the drive to act. Ambition creates the longing, but action is what makes that longing a reality. For many people, the desire to act is overshadowed by the fear of failure, fear of judgment, and the overwhelming nature of their goals. The ambition to be successful is alive within them, but the fear of taking imperfect action keeps them from moving. This is where the concept of self-sabotage often comes into play. It's not that people like Luca don't want to succeed. It's that their fear of failure or inadequacy becomes so great that they sabotage their own efforts. Self-sabotage is a defense mechanism. By not trying, you protect yourself from the possibility of failure. It's a way of avoiding the risk of falling short. But in the end, this avoidance only leads to greater frustration and deeper inaction. The truth is, ambition and laziness aren't mutually exclusive. You can be deeply ambitious, full of dreams and visions, and yet feel stuck or unable to move forward. It's not laziness. It's the fear of failure, perfectionism, and the overwhelming weight of expectations that prevent action from happening. So how do you break free from this paradox? The first step is understanding that inaction is not laziness. It's a response to fear. Once you recognize that your resistance to action is rooted in fear, you can begin to address it. Taking small, imperfect steps is often the key to overcoming this inertia. By acknowledging that failure is a part of the journey, you can shift your mindset from one of fear to one of growth. What if the key to success isn't doing everything perfectly, but simply taking the first step, however imperfect it may be? Section 7. The role of self-compassion in overcoming inaction. If there's one thing that holds people like Luca back, it's the constant stream of self-criticism. Every time he failed to take action, he would berate himself, telling himself that he was lazy, weak, and unworthy of success. This constant negative self-talk only served to reinforce the cycle of inaction. The more he beat himself up, the more paralyzed he became. But what if the key to breaking this cycle wasn't to push harder, to force yourself to work against your natural resistance? What if the key was to be kinder to yourself? Self-compassion is a powerful tool for overcoming inaction, especially for those who are ambitious but feel incapable of taking action. Rather than criticizing yourself for not acting, self-compassion encourages you to acknowledge your struggles without judgment. It allows you to accept that it's okay to be imperfect, to take small steps, and to be gentle with yourself during times of difficulty. Studies have shown that self-compassion leads to greater motivation and resilience. When we treat ourselves with kindness, we're more likely to take action, even in the face of fear. For Luca, this could have been the turning point. Instead of seeing his lack of progress as a personal failure, he could view it as a natural part of the journey, a moment to reflect, recharge, and try again. The message here is simple. The road to success is not about being perfect or forcing yourself into action. It's about learning to treat yourself with the same compassion you would offer to a friend. When you allow yourself the space to fail, to be imperfect, and to learn from your mistakes, you begin to unlock the door to real progress. Think about it. How often do you treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would extend to someone else who was struggling with the same issues? Section 8. The science of momentum and how to build it. One of the most effective ways to overcome inertia is through the power of momentum. The concept is simple. Once you start moving, it becomes easier to keep moving. And this isn't just motivational fluff. It's rooted in neuroscience. When we take action, no matter how small, our brains release dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with reward and motivation. This creates a positive feedback loop where each small step leads to more motivation to take the next step. Essentially, the more action you take, the more your brain wants to continue moving forward. For Luca, the trick wasn't to jump into a huge project all at once. It was to start small, taking a single imperfect step. This could have been as simple as writing a few sentences, making one small decision, or dedicating just 10 minutes to a task. By focusing on small actions, Luca would begin to build momentum. Over time, these small steps would compound into bigger ones, creating a sense of accomplishment and motivation to continue. Research has shown that even the smallest achievements can have a profound impact on our sense of self-worth and motivation. The key is not to focus on the enormity of the goal, but rather on the process of taking action. The more action you take, the more confident and motivated you become. And before you know it, you've built up the momentum to take on larger, more challenging tasks. Have you ever noticed how the hardest part of a task is simply getting started? What small step can you take today to build some momentum toward your goal? Section 9. The role of mindset in overcoming the laziness-ambition paradox. Luca's story is not unique. It's the story of countless individuals who are caught between the tension of ambition and inaction. But what separates those who break free from those who remain stuck is often their mindset. Mindset is everything. It's the lens through which we view the world, ourselves, and our challenges. If Luca had adopted a growth mindset, a mindset that embraces challenges, sees failures as opportunities to learn, and believes that effort leads to improvement, he would have been able to overcome his own fears of inadequacy and inaction. In contrast, those with a fixed mindset believe that their abilities are static and unchangeable. They fear failure because they see it as a reflection of their inherent inability rather than as a step in the learning process. For Luca, this fixed mindset created a wall between his ambitions and his actions. Every time he feared failure, it reinforced the belief that he wasn't cut out for success. But with a growth mindset, Luca would have seen each step, each small effort as a valuable part of his journey, a journey that wasn't about perfection, but about growth. Studies have shown that people with a growth mindset are more likely to succeed in the long run because they embrace effort and view challenges as opportunities. A growth mindset shifts the focus from the outcome to the process. Instead of seeing failure as a reflection of your abilities, you see it as a natural part of learning. This shift in mindset is crucial for overcoming the paralysis of ambition without action. What's your mindset when faced with a challenge? Do you see failure as something to avoid, or do you see it as an opportunity to grow and improve? Section 10. Breaking the cycle of inaction. Small steps lead to big results. The path to overcoming inaction is not about massive leaps, it's about small steps. By breaking down large goals into manageable chunks, you can start moving without feeling overwhelmed by the enormity of the task. For Luca, this meant shifting his focus from the end goal to the small daily actions that would get him there. Each small step taken is a victory, and each victory adds to your sense of accomplishment. This doesn't mean that setbacks won't happen, of course they will. But when you take small, consistent actions, you build resilience, confidence, and the momentum needed to keep going. The key to overcoming the paradox of laziness and ambition is to recognize that the biggest hurdle is often not the task itself, but the fear of starting. Once you take that first step, the rest begins to fall into place. And with each small step, you prove to yourself that you are capable, that your ambitions are within reach. For Luca, this meant setting aside his unrealistic expectations of perfection and embracing the process of growth. It meant breaking down his big dreams into smaller, achievable tasks and focusing on the present moment rather than worrying about the future. The first step is always the hardest, but once you take it, the rest of the journey becomes easier.